Hey guys, my name is Dice Rollin. Do you like movies about Halloween, a little satanic panic, and 80s metal bands? Then I think you're gonna like this one. Not to be confused with Michael Dougherty's 2007 Trick or Treat. Trick or Treat was directed by Charles Martin Smith, and was released on October 24th, 1986, just in time for Halloween. Also known as Ragman or Death at 33 RPM, it's a bit of an unknown gem in the horror genre, but it does have its own group of fans. I would also like to point out that this review was requested by Ghostly Grimoire. So without further ado, this is my review of Trick or Treat. The movie starts off with a tour of our main character's room, and I would be lying if I said I wouldn't want some of the stuff decorating the place. This is Eddie Weinbauer, played by Marc Price, or as I like to call him, Hello, Skippy. Eddie's writing a letter about his high school outcast woes to his heavy metal idol, Sammy Kerr, played by Tony Fields. We get a little more background on the type of guy Sammy Kerr is through the news. Apparently, Sammy wanted to perform at his former high school and Eddie's current hell, but he was denied because of his obscene onstage antics.
There's an addiction that is reaching an epidemic proportion in our schools. I am referring to rock music.
Oh my god, it's Large Marge. Well, I guess she would be the one to talk about what's suitable for children. Ugh. Just as Eddie finally turns his attention to the news, we learn that Sammy Kerr had died in a fire at his hotel earlier. This prompts a poster-destroying meltdown, so if you're a collector, this would be a good time to look away. Later that night, we're given our first rock star cameo with the introduction of the local DJ, Nuke, played by Gene Simmons. Eddie and Nuke discuss Sammy Kerr, and Nuke points out that Eddie's idolization of the rock star isn't entirely informed. It's a good point, really, because Eddie never knew Sammy, while Nuke did. It seems Sammy was a very angry individual, and that didn't get any better after he left high school. However, Eddie firmly believes that the school is to blame. Nuke gives Eddie the last record that Sammy made, telling him that he plans to play it for the first time on air Halloween night, as it was Sammy's idea. Eddie goes to school, and Leslie, his crush, played by Lisa Orgolini, gives him the cassette tape that the bullies took from him, as well as a lovely Polaroid of his naked ass. Literally. And she invites him to the pool party being held that night. Smooth. Unfortunately for Eddie, Leslie forgot to mention that along with the rest of the student body, the guys who bully him on a regular basis would also be attending the party. One of which, named Tim, played by Doug Savant, slips a weight into Eddie's backpack so that he'll sink to the bottom of the pool like a rock, or more accurately, like a chunk of metal. Leslie jumps in to save Eddie from drowning in a pool, and Eddie storms out of the party under the assumption that Leslie set him up. He swears a somewhat soggy revenge on the bullies, and sulks in his room while listening to Sammy's last record. He seems to get a vision of the events leading up to the fiery death of the rocker. However, the demonic chanting he's hearing is actually coming from the record. He plays it backwards and finds that Sammy is giving him instructions. Eddie sets up a trap and lures the bullies into it at lunch the next day. This leads to a chase reminiscent of the Looney Tunes, and the bullies getting in deep shit with the faculty. Eddie plays the hidden message to his friend Roger, played by Glenn Morgan, who seems less than impressed. He tells Eddie that he's crazy, but Eddie still believes that the message was specifically for him. So that night, Eddie plays the record backwards again, and gets direct proof that Sammy is in fact speaking with him from beyond the grave. The next day at school, Eddie follows the next phase of Sammy's instructions to exact revenge. The bullies find Eddie in woodshop and plan to cave his skull in. Unfortunately for them, there's loads of fun tools for a psychotic spirit to get his intangible hands on. After almost getting impaled through the head, Tim and his friend retreat. Meanwhile, Eddie's mom wanders into his room and reacts the same way that most non-metal fans would to such music. And once again, that night, Eddie plays Sammy's music with some nice ambient goth mood lighting. Yeah, I don't mean to tell you how to do things, Eddie, but, maybe lighting a bunch of candles to draw in your idol who died by fire isn't such a spot-on idea. Eddie copies the record to a cassette and gives it to Tim as a quote-unquote peace offering. Roger, being the token nerd, tells Eddie that he needs to stop this vengeful crap and focus on his studies, but Eddie's a little too high on his new power to care. We learn the reason behind Eddie's gift to Tim when he and his girlfriend are getting frisky that night. However, the scariest part about this scene is the fact that she doesn't even wear the right sides of the headphones on the right ears. Anyway, Tim's girlfriend encounters Casper, the little too friendly perv. Or was it a demon? Regardless, you know how parents would tell you that metal shit would melt your brain? Well, that's pretty much what happened. But enough of that, Eddie's mom is exercising. Yay? This is where we get our second rock star cameo in the form of Ozzy Osbourne, playing an evangelical reverend who believes rock is evil. Need I comment on how ironic and amusing this is? Though, to be honest, I would like to visit his church.
Welcome to the Church of Oz.
Tim pulls up to Eddie's house demanding to know what he did to his girlfriend and tells him that he doesn't want anything to do with Eddie anymore. This is the point where Eddie really begins to question the lengths his supernatural friend is willing to go to for revenge. So Eddie tells Sammy he's done with helping him fulfill these tasks. Sammy, however, isn't finished yet and threatens to cause harm to Eddie's mother and Leslie. Sammy resurrects himself and Eddie beats the ever-living shit out of his stereo set. This causes his mother to ground his ass, and I can't say I blame her, since back then that system would have cost quite a bit. But Eddie has more important things to worry about, like sending Roger to get that tape he gave Tim back. Roger does this without being murdered by Tim, only to fall victim to his own stupidity by playing the damn thing despite the fact that Eddie told him to destroy it. Sammy, of course, appears and tells Roger to play that tape tonight, given that it's Halloween, or he'll kill him. Given those options, Roger plays the tape at the school party, and Eddie hears it over the phone when Leslie calls him. So he jumps in his car to go to the school. However, Eddie forgot to get rid of the other tape of Sammy's music, and Sammy channels Christine to prevent him from getting to his destination alive. Thankfully, Eddie stops the car just in time to prevent his own demise. Meanwhile, a live band is preparing to take the stage, but the undead rocker takes over. They perform the song Trick or Treat before Sammy disintegrates a third of the crowd. Eddie arrives just in time for Tim to amp up his levels of douchebaggery and get blown up by Sammy. Eddie, Roger, and Leslie try to shut off the power to stop Sammy. Roger succeeds and nearly gets his ass killed in the process. Eddie tries to get help for Roger, but for whatever reason, the police and a majority of the students point the finger at Eddie. So he and Leslie make a break for it while he explains how the situation came about. Through this, he realizes that there's one more copy of Sammy's record currently in Nuke's possession. Just as Nuke promised, the record plays at midnight, and once again Sammy appears and chases after Eddie and Leslie. In an effort to make a safe space, Eddie goes around his entire house destroying all electric appliances, except for one. And it turns out water is a royal bitch for Sammy. Or maybe it's toilets. They steal a cop car since Eddie's mom's car is occupied by a rather pissed off and soggy Sammy, and arrive at the WZLP station. But they're too late as Sammy seems to have taken over the station. But Eddie comes up with a plan to lure him out so Leslie can get the tape. Eddie's plan works and Sammy is destroyed. With that, the credits roll with the song Midnight. Now to discuss the pros and cons. The soundtrack for Trick or Treat, specifically Sammy Kerr's music, is performed by the band Fastway and composer Christopher Young. I think their combined efforts paid off and they were able to create some good music. I mean, I'm not a metalhead, but I like the songs that were used, and I feel like they fit the style of the movie. The catchiest being Trick or Treat, which was used in the trailer too. The practical and special effects aren't as bad as you might think. Like when Sammy returns to the world of the living in Eddie's room. Those were some cool effects that didn't make me go, ooh. And the demon creature in Tim's car looked pretty decent for the short time it was on screen. That creature was actually made by Kevin Yeager, who also did the effects for Freddy Krueger, Chucky, and the Crypt Keeper. Acting-wise, everybody seemed to do a good job playing their parts. Marc Price made Eddie a dedicated metal fan, a likable character with flaws he eventually realizes and tries to make right. Tony Fields was obviously having a lot of fun playing Sammy Kerr. He put tons of energy into the character, especially on stage. The side characters, while not standing out tremendously, had enough personality for the audience to grab onto throughout the film. And let's talk about Gene Simmons and Ozzy Osbourne for a minute. Gene Simmons' character felt a little flat when he was just talking to Eddie, but his radio personality was kind of fun. I think we all know that Ozzy playing a cynical, self-righteous evangelical was pretty sweet for him. For all the shit he's gotten over the years for his onstage persona and music, getting the chance to spoof the very people who did that must have been fun. The plot of the film rides the edge of cheesy and cliche, but it's a fun ride. It's a very 80s horror movie that's not necessarily scary or creepy. It's no less enjoyable for that, especially if you enjoy the kind of movies from that decade. It doesn't take itself too seriously and pokes fun at the subject matter as well as the rock industry and 80s hair metal bands of the time. It keeps a good pace throughout and doesn't linger too long on slow or dialogue heavy moments, and gives the audience plenty of action-filled scenes. This was a movie made with the intent of it being a fun, wild horror film, with heavy metal hair bands playing a major role. So I'm giving Trick or Treat 5 out of 10 bloody thumbs up. It's not the best movie, but I enjoyed watching it. All in all, I liked it. It's just a fun 80s horror movie with a cool soundtrack. I would recommend Trick or Treat to people who don't like a lot of gore or scares in their horror movies. Cheesy 80s horror movie fans, and I think even rock and metal fans would find this movie to be a treat. If you're a fan of Ozzy Osbourne or Gene Simmons, then I think you'll like it too. And yes, I do have it on my list of Halloween movies. With that being said, I want to thank Ghostly Grimoire once again for requesting I review this movie. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a like to let me know. And don't forget to leave a comment down below and let me know what you think of this movie. And if you have any suggestions for horror movies you would like to see me review in the future. And don't forget to share this video to help the channel grow and subscribe for more videos like this. Remember, we're doing this the whole month. See you later.